I work in concrete, foundation work mostly. We come in after the excavation crews clear the land, pour the footings, lay the steel, and seal the forms. It's honest work. I've been doing it since I dropped out of high school, and aside from a few minor injuries and a couple of job sites that went belly up, it's been steady. But in 2022, I took a job on the outskirts of Helena, Montana, that I still think about almost every night before falling asleep. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something quiet did. The development was supposed to be a retirement community. Single-story homes with open floor plans, safe walkways, big front porches. The project was split into 3 phases, and I was contracted during phase 1. 12 houses, 2 months, all slab-on-grade construction. I didn't know most of the crew, just me and my buddy Tony, who I'd worked with for years. The rest were local hires or temps the contractor pulled from a Facebook group. By the second week, things were moving smooth. We'd poured the first 6 slabs, tied the rebar for the next 3, and had just started the trench for house 7. That's when the tapping started. It was late, close to midnight, and we were doing a rare night pour because of the heat wave. Montana doesn't usually get that kind of heat in June, but we were hitting 97 degrees by noon. Concrete cures better in cooler temps, so the contractor agreed to a midnight shift. Tony and I didn't mind. Fewer people around, quiet air, and something peaceful about working under floodlights. That night, we had just finished leveling the final edge of the pad when I heard it. A soft rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 coming from beneath the slab we'd just finished. I paused, trowel still in hand. "You hear that?" I asked Tony. He stopped, listened, shrugged. "Probably just settling." But it wasn't. Settling doesn't keep rhythm, and it doesn't sound like knuckles. It kept going. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. 3 beats, a pause, then 3 again. Like someone knocking on a hollow door from the inside. I crouched down, ear close to the slab. Still warm, still wet underneath. The tapping was faint but clear. I looked at Tony. "You sure no one's screwing around? No kids or something?" "Dude, it's midnight. We're half a mile from the road. There's nothing but dirt under that slab." We checked the perimeter. No footprints, no signs anyone had been near the site. The ground around the forms was untouched. Still, we chalked it up to echo or vibration from the equipment. The next night, same thing, only now the tapping started before we even finished pouring. This time it came from the trench itself. I was tying rebar near the back corner when I felt a faint thump under my boots. I froze, then felt it again. Tap, 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 from beneath the trench through 4 feet of compacted gravel. Tony noticed my face and walked over. "It's back, huh?" I nodded. "Lower this time." "Maybe underground water?" "Sounds solid. Like knuckles." We called over Rick, the night foreman, who was new to construction and quick to blame rodents or roots for anything he didn't understand. He stood by the trench for a full minute, then shook his head. "No way. It's concrete and rock. Nothing's down there." "Can we delay the pour?" I asked. "For knocking?" He laughed. "No one's going to believe we halted a job for knocking." So we poured. And the tapping stopped once the concrete covered it. Over the next week, the tapping followed us. Always beneath the slab we were prepping. Always at night. The same rhythm. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. Never frantic, just patient. And never during the day. Tony started sleeping in his truck instead of driving home. Said he had a dream where the slab cracked open and a hand came out. He laughed when he told me, but it didn't feel like a joke. I'd started avoiding walking over the poured slabs entirely. I didn't want to feel the vibration again. The turning point came during the prep for the final foundation. We were grading the last lot and I was alone with a compactor leveling the gravel. It was just before midnight, and the others were unloading formwork on the far side. That's when I heard the tapping again, but not beneath me. This time, it came from the rebar cage behind the trailer. I walked over slowly. The cage was 10 feet long, bundled tight, laid out ready for the next day. No one nearby. The tapping sounded like metal on metal. Tap, tap, tap. I stood over it and the sound stopped. I didn't move. Then it started again, fainter now, like it had shifted beneath the gravel. I knelt, pressing my palm to the ground. Nothing. Then suddenly, a new sound. A voice. Not words. Just a moan. Long, slow, like someone in pain but too tired to yell. It was muffled, like it came from 20 feet below. I backed up fast. Called Tony over. He didn't hear it at first, but when it moaned again, he turned white. "Man, I don't think this is animals," he said. We told Rick. He finally agreed to delay the pour and let the survey team do some ground scans. The next day, a geotech guy came out with a ground-penetrating radar unit. Said it was probably a sinkhole or air pocket. He spent an hour scanning, then pulled us aside. "There's something down there," he said. "About 15 feet below. A cavity, irregular shape, maybe 8 feet long. Could be a cave-in or an old cistern." "This land's supposed to be clean," I said. "No structures," he nodded. "Well, there's definitely something hollow. Might be worth drilling before pouring over it." But Rick said no. We had a schedule. And since it wasn't on the plans, the developer refused to spend a dime. We poured that slab the next night. I didn't sleep well for weeks after. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I didn't. No one got hurt. Nothing broke. But Tony quit 2 days later. Just walked off mid-shift. Never answered his phone again. I've heard rumors since. Other crews in later phases talked about noises under their slabs. One guy said his tools went missing overnight and showed up buried in fresh concrete. A month ago I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a rusted trowel. Not mine, not Tony's. Just a trowel. Old and worn with dry concrete still on the handle. There was a note, too. Just 6 words. "You poured over me. I remember." I worked on a commercial development site in a mid-sized town in Oregon. Nothing glamorous, just a 6-story office building going up between a strip mall and a municipal park. I was one of the site supervisors for a general contractor. It was the kind of job where most of your time was spent checking concrete curing times, inspecting PPE compliance, and making sure no one left coffee cups in the rebar forms. We didn't run night shifts. The site shut down at 6 p.m. sharp every day, no exceptions. The equipment was locked down, perimeter lights kicked on, and a security company did 1 or 2 patrols overnight. The crane, our big yellow tower crane, was the first thing locked. The cab had a keypad lock, and the ladder access had 2 separate gate locks. Only 3 of us had the codes. Myself, the site manager, and the certified operator, a guy named Jose. This started on a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because the inspection had been bumped to the following Friday, and we were trying to get the decking done before the rains hit. I stayed late, not working, just catching up on reports in the mobile office trailer. Around 9:40 p.m., I stepped outside for air and noticed the silhouette of the crane against the night sky. Nothing strange about that. The lights from the strip mall gave the whole site a weird kind of glow even at night. But something caught my eye, a glint near the operator's cab. At first I thought it was a reflection, but then it moved. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow shift like someone adjusting their stance. I squinted. It really looked like there was someone standing in the cab. I knew the ladder was locked. I knew Jose was home. We'd texted about a schedule change 2 hours earlier. I told myself it had to be my eyes playing tricks. I went back inside, finished my reports, and left by 10:30. The next morning, I asked the security guy during his rounds if he'd seen anything weird. He said no. No alarms, no movement, nothing on the cameras. But I pulled the footage from the site's top corner pole cam anyway. It covered a wide angle, but you could make out the base of the crane and part of the cab. I scrolled through the footage from midnight to 4 a.m. just to be thorough. And there it was. At exactly 3:12 a.m., a shape moved into frame, up in the cab. It looked like a man, standing completely still, facing forward. Not working, not sitting, just standing. The image was grainy and the lighting was awful, but when I zoomed in I saw something that made my stomach turn. The figure's head was angled down, toward the camera, not a casual glance. It was like he was staring directly into the lens, almost like he knew he was being watched. I played it back a few times. Each time it gave me a chill I couldn't shake. I showed it to the site manager. He said, "It had to be a prank. Maybe someone scaled the crane." But the locks were still in place, no signs of tampering, and no one had reported anything missing. I asked Jose if he'd been by that night. He said, "Hell no," laughed it off. "You'd have to pay me double to get up there in the dark," he said. But that night something else happened. We came in Wednesday morning and found a trail of muddy footprints, leading from the crane's base to the corner of the site, disappearing into the gravel lot. They weren't deep, like someone sprinting. They were slow, methodical, almost like the person was barefoot, but heavy. The prints were odd, too, almost boot-shaped, but with no tread. The security guy swore no one had entered the site. No alarms, nothing on his walkthroughs. Still, I had the team check the locks again. Everything was sealed. Thursday night, I stayed late again, this time with a thermos of coffee and a better camera. I parked my truck where I had a clear line of sight to the crane and waited. Nothing happened until 3 a.m. sharp. First, a faint creak from the metal, then a subtle sway, too small for wind. I raised my camera. At 3:09 a.m., the cab's window caught the glow from the strip mall. I saw it again. A figure, he, or it, wasn't just standing. It was hunched forward, one hand pressed to the glass like it was peering out. The head moved, slowly, and once again, it turned toward my direction. I clicked a photo, but it came out a blur. Then I heard something I will never forget. A laugh. A low, rasping laugh carried on the wind, descending from the crane's height like it was whispered, straight into my ear. I felt a pressure in my chest like I'd just inhaled something cold and wrong. I drove off. I didn't care about protocol. I left everything, even my camera bag. The next morning, no one believed me. But when we checked again, more footprints. Same size, same direction. This time they circled the crane's base. Jose refused to operate the crane that day, said it gave him a bad feeling. We had to bring in a replacement, but they didn't last long either. Everyone started getting nervous. We had one guy quit after claiming he heard someone whisper his name from inside the locked cab while checking the tower bolts. Eventually, we brought in a technician to check the security system and camera feeds. He scrubbed the data for anomalies. The footage from Thursday night, corrupted? Only that window, 3 to 3:15 a.m., just a swirl of static and occasional flashes of black and white distortion. Once, for just a frame, the technician caught a freeze. It showed the figure, closer than before. Head tilted, still staring into the camera. The city finished the building in spring. The crane came down in late February. The new tenants moved in April, none the wiser. But I kept that blurry photo from the second night. It's nothing impressive, just a smudge and the shine of a window. But if you squint, you can see the outline. And the faintest trace of eyes. They don't look human. I work for a mid-sized construction company out of New Jersey, mostly doing big commercial jobs. Warehouses, retail shells, the occasional office park. In April of last year, we started work on a 4-story medical complex in central Pennsylvania. It was one of those fast-track developments where the steel gets dropped before the permits are even fully signed, and everything runs on a double shift to meet deadlines. I was on the day crew, mostly formwork and reinforcement prep for the concrete pours. The night crew handled the actual pouring. Cheaper labor, fewer traffic issues, less safety oversight. We'd show up at 6 a.m. and usually find the concrete hardening nicely, ready to strip the forms and start the next layer. The weirdness started around the second week. One morning we showed up and noticed a faint handprint in the fresh slab near the elevator shaft. It wasn't unusual for someone to accidentally brush against wet concrete, but this one was deep. Like someone had deliberately pressed their palm into it, then dragged their fingers out slowly. The weirdest part? It was already hard by the time we got there. No one on the night crew claimed to have seen it. Then came the cigarette butts. They were stubbed out in neat little circles on the form panels, always in the same spot, between two plywood sheets near the eastern stairwell. Our foreman thought it was a dumb prank, maybe a disgruntled temp, but no one ever saw who did it, and every night we scrubbed them off, only for them to reappear the next morning in the exact same place. By the third week, the night crew started getting twitchy. Our site radio buzzed with talk of missing tools, bolt, cutters, trowels, even a set of gloves disappearing mid-pour and reappearing half-buried in the concrete the next day. At first, we blamed the wind or sloppy work. But then someone found a hard hat near the footings with a long crack running through the crown, like it had been hit from above. No one reported an accident. We got serious after that. The site manager installed an extra set of motion-activated cameras along the west side, especially around the utility rooms, where most of the activity seemed to concentrate. A couple of us stayed an extra hour past shift to review the first night of footage. And that's when we saw him. It was about 2:41 a.m. The camera near the utility access flicked on, triggered by motion. A man in a high-vis vest and white helmet stepped into frame, walking slowly, almost stiffly. His uniform was standard, nothing off at first glance, except for the fact that the site was supposed to be empty. Every single worker had clocked out hours before. There was no authorized night work scheduled. The man didn't look at the camera. He just stood still at the far wall of the west stairwell and faced the concrete, like he was inspecting it. Then, he turned toward the lens. The footage fuzzed slightly, but we caught a glimpse of his face, or rather, where his face should have been. It looked pale, almost smooth, like it was either covered or swollen shut. He tilted his head once, then walked out of frame. The clip ended. We went to check the area immediately. There were fresh footprints in the dust, big heavy boot treads leading right up to the wall and stopping there. No return path. Just a set of prints that started nowhere and ended in concrete. Things deteriorated after that. One of the guys on the night crew, Miguel, quit mid-shift after claiming someone whispered his name inside the stairwell. He said the voice was hoarse, low, and coming from inside the formwork. We thought he was messing with us until we tore the panels down the next day and found a name scratched into the back of one with a nail. Pete J. "I'm still here," I asked around, assuming Pete was a laborer who'd been let go. But no, one could remember him. We went through old rosters. Nothing, not a single Pete or Peter had worked that job since it started. We kept pouring. Schedule's a schedule. But something shifted. Concrete is supposed to settle clean and flat, especially with our crew. But random blemishes started forming, raised areas shaped like shoulders, or dents in the surface that vaguely resembled a face. We jackhammered and repoured. They came back. Once we found 2 boot prints on a slab we'd just smoothed. The prints were upside down, like someone had walked on the ceiling below. On week 6, we poured the retaining wall at the rear loading dock. It was a massive slab, over 12 feet high, reinforced with rebar and poured in stages. The night pour went as scheduled. But in the morning, our finishing crew found something lodged in the base. It was a safety glove, still filled out, stiff with concrete, and stuck deep in the corner where the rebar met the foundation wall. It looked like someone's hand was still inside, even though it was empty. The glove had PJ written on it in Sharpie. That was the last straw for our foreman. He halted work and brought in a structural inspector and a rep from the company. They reviewed everything, said the anomalies weren't structural, just cosmetic weirdness. They greenlit the continuation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That name, the glove, the face in the camera. I started staying late watching. More footage. Night after night, I saw him. The man in the vest. Sometimes standing still in the exact same spot. Sometimes walking the site perimeter slowly, deliberately, and always facing the concrete like he was waiting for it to open. One night I watched a live feed around 3:01 a.m. The camera glitched. When it cleared, the man was looking directly into the lens, his head tilted again like he was trying to recognize me. Then the screen went dark. We checked the camera. It had been unplugged from the inside of a locked equipment shed. We finished the project 2 months later. I've worked dozens of jobs since, but I never forgot that site. Last month I passed by it while driving through town. The complex is operational now. Parking lot full, lights on, offices busy. But as I waited at the red light near the side loading dock, I glanced at the concrete wall we poured. There was a faint stain near the base. Faint, but shaped unmistakably, like a handprint, still fresh, still wet-looking, on concrete that's been dry for over a year.